Good evening. As we speak, Uganda is experiencing 40 years of rule under President Yoweri Museveni. There is divided opinion on the strength of the economy. But what is clear, there is rampant youth unemployment with a high cost of living. Public health insurance is low, with many paying out of pocket, according to the 2024 National Housing and Population Census data. The opposition on Tuesday presented a parallel budget for the next financial year. But the question is, does it answer the needs for Ugandans? And to which direction does it take the country? This comes amidst many political scenes shaking the country's stand to progress, including the criticism on Mufumbiro's bail application, the NRM retreat, the speakership race, and the swearing-in ceremony scheduled for May the 12th. To unwrap all this, we have the Honorable Joel Ssenyonyi, the leader of opposition. Mr. Joel Ssenyonyi, the Honorable Joel Ssenyonyi, a warm welcome to you, sir. Thank you so much for having honored our invitation.
Thank you. Thank you for hosting me, Patrick. I'm also Mr.
You know,
these titles
I am genuinely sorry, Joel, because for one factor, you know, when you come back, it's like you've come back to your alma mater.
Yes, and I feel like I'm back home, so it's even okay to call me Joel.
I know, but it could be misunderstood by some people, and you have a title and you earned it and you deserve it. So honorable.
No, sometimes we honestly get so consumed by these titles. I normally see colleagues, introducing themselves. My name is Honorable So-and-so. So I'm always telling them, your name is not Honorable So-and-so. Honorable is the title. So I can't introduce myself and say, my name is Honorable Joel Ssenyonyi. My name is Joel Ssenyonyi.
You have a lot of work now.
So I normally tell them, please don't add that prefix when you're introducing yourself. But well, glad to be here. How are you?
I'm okay. Good to see you.
Well, we are there. Pressing on with life.
It's very interesting that when you go to Parliament, I don't know whether it works that way, you even become younger.
Is that so? I look older than I should. I'm graying because of,
you need to learn.
I don't know, all the things you've got to deal with.
I need to teach you some tricks when it comes to the gray hair. you declare it off. So, I need also to congratulate you for having been re-elected. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. This was a military operation. It's not something you would describe in the real sense as an election. But here we are.
But talking about, it has always been in your view and other people of your kind that it is always a military operation, the ground is always not leveled. But when I look back into that election, Joel, your performance was really bad. Across the country, you are literally obliterated. How do you regroup and have that kind of impact and oomph that you had before? Because you seem to have lost your mojo.
All right. Allow me to use, firstly, 1 minute to express commiserations with the family of Alex Waiswa Mufumbiro. His wife passed on. She's been battling cancer for quite a bit of time, Edith Katende Mufumbiro. When Alex was arrested in September of last year, she was on treatment and her situation began to deteriorate. Remember her doctors engaging us and saying, please counsel her, tell her not to think too much about the jail situation of her husband because she needs to focus and for the treatment to work. And we told the doctors we'll do what we can, but the reality is that the husband is in jail. So it took a heavy toll on her. We were in court as lawyers of Alex Waiswa and the others, and were seeking bail for them. She came as surety for the husband, and one of the reasons, you see, when you apply for bail, for each accused person, you'll have a narrative. And part of that for Waiswa was, this man should be released on bail, go take care of his wife. He's the caregiver, and so on. And something very perturbing, the state prosecutor said, no, these people are probably lying. Even those letters, she had medical records from Uganda Cancer Institute. And the state prosecutor said those medical records could even be forged from Nasa Road. I said, this is preposterous because you work for government. So if we are saying these are government documents, because Uganda Cancer Institute is a government entity, just go and verify. Why are you trying to mock this family? I don't know what that said prosecutor now is thinking about all of these different things. Anyhow, the magistrate told us, I've adjourned for 2 weeks. State, go and verify, I'll give my ruling. 2 weeks later, he was sent back to jail, and of course the others. So it's been tough. We visited her recently when she was hospitalized, and she kept telling everybody, especially family, said, look, my husband was not released so he could take care of me, but I pray and hope he can be released to come and bury me. So we told her, Edith, please don't talk about that. You're not going to die. Be strong. You've been strong all this while. But she said, me, I can tell. I feel what I feel. I know I'm going. Anyhow, tomorrow we are back to court for a scheduled ruling on the bail application we put in for Waiswa, Eddie Mutoya, and the others. Our hope is that we can tap into the Ubuntu of these judicial officers. They are human too. You know, applying for bail is a right.
You're hoping they still have Ubuntu?
I'm hoping so.
The same person who said this could have been a forgery from Nasoro? There could be some turnaround?
I'm hoping that they could have had a change of heart. The woman has died. Release the man. Besides, you're not even ready for trial. You know, and that's what we keep saying. These people that have been locked up for 6 years. Trial has not kicked off. You've not adduced an ounce of evidence. 6 years later, it doesn't exist. It's persecution. Anyhow, we commiserate with the family.
We, as on the spot, we really sympathize with the Waiswa Mafumbiro. He was a regular on this show, and he always added value on this show. And I can imagine when losing a spouse is really heavy on any person, no matter age or status or whatever, it will hit him hard. And may God give him the strength.
Well, I mean, I saw their little children, one of whom 2 years old.
It is even worse for the children.
Their mother's died, their father is in jail. May God help us. But as I now move swiftly to your question.
Yes, because
I wanted to also say this, if you allow me. You know, there is always a silver lining in a dark cloud. So, you know, this evening as we're dealing with all of that, we've got some news that, you know, inoculated us with a bit of excitement and hope amidst the difficult situations we are going through. The NUP flag bearer for the Makerere Guild race, Kadondi Gracious, she has won her race. Somebody might say, why are you excited about this? It's just a university election. Well, partly because we are going through a lot. So anything that could, you know,
lift up your spirit
is a good thing. But also Makerere is different. It has a way it propels leaders to national level. They become leaders at national level. One of the most recent guild presidents, Robert Maseruka, is now a member of parliament elect, NUP. Others are at City Hall and so on, so it propels them. I told Gracious when she came to my office 2 days ago, I said, you're going to win. But when you win, please faithfully serve the students of Makerere. And she gave me her word. So we congratulate her and we hope that she will do exactly that.
Yeah, because all of those who have been there from Basali Rua to Norbert Mao to Charles Ruomushane to, you know, to Adeke to Sareka Gingo, there have been people who have managed to.
Yeah, I mean, a number of them are
the governor in the leadership of Uganda
are really adding value. Of course, some have become a shadow of their former past. That's a story for another day, some of the names you've mentioned, but really it propels anyone to national level. Now, going to your question, because you said that we were obliterated.
You were. When you look at outside of Uganda, the performance was not like the NUP of old.
But even here in Uganda, I mean, it's the whole country. So yes, obliterated, but how? It would be good to take an odyssey of this election as it happened. Patrick, this was a military operation.
It has always been a military operation. Actually, if you look back at what happened in Arua when the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi's driver was killed and when he was tortured, I mean, the ground, even in your own words, has never been leveled.
Yeah, and it keeps getting worse. And what I was saying, this was a lot different. 2021, we did go through what we went through. It was tumultuous. This was different, and for very obvious reasons. 40 years later, people are tired and despondent about this regime. So the regime uses a lot more energy, a lot more force to impose itself on the people. So they will kill those people throughout the campaign.
You gave us an impression that this time around
but I'm still answering your question.
Because you gave us an impression this time around, Joel, that you are more organized, that you are going to vote, that you are going to protect your vote, that in case it is stolen, you are going to demand for it.
So can I first finish answering that question, then answer this one? Which one do you want me to answer? I'm all yours. Which one do you want me to answer, sir?
Those are your questions.
Okay, so then let me answer so that you don't interrupt. Then I'm not able to finish. I was painting for you a picture of really how the election did go. People were killed. People were arrested. You saw the brutality of the campaign, that as the NUP was holding rallies, it was always tear gas, bullets, and so on. And police and the military, they kept claiming, you guys are holding processions. And we said, look, elections are such. If you're to make an egg, you've got to break, if you're to make an omelette, you've got to break some eggs. Meanwhile, the NRM is holding processions. It's okay. NUP holds processions. They have got to be battered. So this really was the environment in which the election gets to be conducted. And no wonder the outcome happened as it did. That they decided to blatantly do as they pleased. RDCs were manning tally centers. And you saw the supervisor of RDCs, he's the secretary in the office of the president, Haji Yunus Kakande. He's the equivalent of a permanent secretary in a ministry. He was in parliament in a committee and he conceded that yes, a number of RDCs misbehaved in the election. There you are, a confession coming from them. And so that's the kind of election that we did have. No wonder it happened this way. And it does not settle with the people. So the NRM can get excited and they say, some 7, he got 71%. Did he? Your guess is as good as mine.
I suppose you knew what you're up against. What did you expect?
Yeah, so Patrick, you wake up every day to come and work. You know you're up against the world. You're up against tumultuous challenges. You'll go through traffic. That's problem number one. You're trying to get to work and then issue after issue and so on. You still wake up the following day and get back to work. Every single day, difficult as things are. We must not tire, tedious as this is. And by the way, this is beyond the Chagulanyis of this world, the Senyonyis of this world. It's a matter for all the people of Uganda. I saw ladies whose property was demolished, as they were trying to do this trade order thing in Kampala and the other parts of the country. And I saw ladies who were livid. They were angry and saying, Chagulanyi, where are you? They are breaking our stuff and so on. Of course, I commiserated and sympathized with them. But I remember a statement we always make, in a sinking boat, there are no survivors. All of us must be concerned about these things.
So if things are going to change, Honorable Senyonyi, I suppose you have to create some kind of civic competence from the people. You have to have a vibrant citizenry and for them to be able to see Uganda from your prism. And how far have you gone to that end so that you have the people? Because power belongs to the people. If the people stand their ground, there's no army, there's no government, there's no party that can push them. What will make Uganda have a higher civic competence than we have?
Patrick, before 1994, South Africa grappled with the apartheid regime for donkey's years. Many died in that struggle. Many literally gave their all. They went through hell, but they didn't tire. They kept on and on. Slave trade, which was legal in the West and elsewhere, for donkey's years. But those who were up against it, pushing back, they did not tire because they knew that was not an option. And eventually, they attained the victory they were pursuing. So you ask, what will happen for the people to rise to the occasion? We've got to keep pressing on. I don't know what that trigger would be.
You know,
But,
it's interesting you're quoting apartheid in South Africa and this slavery in the United States and other parts of the world. Apartheid almost 300 years, slavery almost 400 years. Really, is that the path? Is that what you want to equate it to? Like maybe after some time, when all of us are long gone, including our grandchildren, maybe Ugandans will get there.
Patrick, people like you and I are supposed to learn from history so that we don't become victims of it. So it's good you're mentioning all of those years so that we know that people who went through such hell eventually attained victory. We should not wait for it to happen that long, but the reality is that there's light at the end of the tunnel when you keep pressing on. Because, yeah, slave trade, apartheid was probably more problematic than this. But if they ended, if they were brought to an end, this is possible too.
You see, what is intriguing for me, Honorable Ssenyonyi, is to see the constituencies and the people you fronted to run. In some cases, for example, LC3 sub-county level, you didn't even have 20% of candidates in those situations. Doesn't that alone put you at a disadvantage in a general election?
The Supreme Court of Kenya, in ruling Raila Amolo Odinga versus their electoral commission and Uhuru Kenyatta at the time, the Supreme Court annulled that election. And cardinally they were saying an election is a process, not an event. And so they were talking about the events in the run-up to the election to say, because the electoral commission was just concerned about the election date, the Supreme Court said, no, an election is a process, not an event. All the things that get to happen, they are part of the process, and so they affect the process positively or negatively. Now come back home. We did see the impunity in even, I mean, it was unheard of that people who are seeking to vie for election would be deregistered from the National Voters Register. That has never happened. We had never gotten to those levels. But somebody who has always been on the voters register, who voted in the last election, is on the voters register, but because they're up against somebody, they will deregister them. Say you're no longer, because you must be a registered voter to stand to be elected. That had never happened. And then we saw a series of several other people who were either deregistered, denied nomination, and all of that. So in an environment like that, it's inevitable that you'll have a challenge such as that. It's inevitable that it will have that trickle-down effect. So no wonder people were declared unopposed. But then you ask, you were declared unopposed. People who, we had an interesting scenario. One of our flag bearers, our initial flag bearer, was a registered voter previously in Makindye. She transferred to Bukedia to go and stand. And the Electoral Commission, with preposterous impunity, in cahoots with the political leader, decided to throw off the register. I said, you people should have been a bit shameful to, at the very worst, send her back to Makindye, where she voted from the other time. That's her town area, her town living place. That's the kind of election you're talking about, Patrick. So no wonder you get to see all of these ills around it.
You know, granted, there were stumbling blocks, and a lot of them on the way to the 2025-6 general election. But also, when you go in, like, for example, I come from Kyenjojo. So when I was take that road, I could clearly see a sea of red as they move out of Kampala up to Mityana. Beyond Mityana, it starts changing into yellow. And when you go up the border with the Congo, it's yellow throughout. Granted, there are stumbling blocks, but also, I don't think you worked harder that you should have.
Patrick, when we went to campaign in Western Uganda, I just want to give you examples so that hopefully you can pick the picture. When we went to campaign in parts of Western Uganda, we found goons who were clad in NRM yellow t-shirts who were saying, Kyagulanyi and NUP, you cannot come to campaign here. They were wielding sticks, protected by police and the military, and they assaulted many of our people. NTV, if you followed, aired that story. Did you not see it? So this is a territory where goons...
In Kiruhura, for example.
Yes, and elsewhere. They're saying you cannot come here. And regardless that police was there, if anything, police was protecting them, and they came to assault our presidential candidate with sticks. On that day, according to the EC's schedule, the NUP presidential candidate was the one meant to be there. So if you don't like him, you're supposed to stay home. But these ones came to town and said, you're not coming to campaign here. They began to beat up people, and they were holding stones and sticks and so on. Now, if that can happen when a presidential candidate is scheduled to be there for campaign, what do you expect about somebody who will try to vie that there will be posters? You see, even here in Kampala that you're talking about, each time Mr. Museveni was going to campaign in a particular place, even here in Uganda, in the night, police and the military would go defacing and removing posters of NUP for all candidates. It happened even in Nakawa, where I come from.
You still emerged victorious.
Patrick, Idi Amin Dada was a brutal man. He killed many people. But not everybody who lived under Idi Amin was killed. Does it make sense? He was a bad man, terrible, brutal dictator.
By the way,
he didn't kill everybody.
We may need to look at that history of Idi Amin one more time, perhaps.
There you are. But let's go with the narrative as it is.
The one that many have swallowed.
Yeah, I mean, this regime keeps saying he was an evil man and so on. He killed people, persecuted people. Yeah, but they have done similar or even worse things, this regime. But anyhow, let's use the example as it is, that this was a bad man, he was a dictator, and he killed people under his regime. Did Idi Amin Dada kill every Ugandan who was living in Uganda? No. So there you have your answer. So when, some NUP flag bearers get declared, and then you want to use that narrative, oh, but you say it's not a free and fair election. How come you were a declared winner? Those who were declared, they went through hell. And just because some were declared does not mean that everything was okay. So just because... some people were killed and so on. There are those who... He didn't kill everybody.
Honorable Senyonyi, when I look at the number of sub-counties, for example, the LOC3 chairpersons, I think they're over 2,000 or thereabout. And vis-a-vis the people you fronted, if I remember the numbers correctly, they were about 19%. Well, NRM had a candidate on every constituency of every sub-county. You had the candidates in 19%. Are you actually telling us that 81% of all those people were denied to register? They made it difficult for them to hold your flag at sub-county level?
I didn't even say that. I said some. The situations were different everywhere. But I think, Patrick, the concern that people like yourselves should have, and as a country really, that we should have, and questions that we should be asking, is the quality of our election. Do we really have free and fair elections? Are candidates given a level ground that now you'll go and campaign and it is well, that RDCs will not be hounding you at whichever level, that everybody will be free to go out there, connect with the people, and then eventually they get to decide? I think that should be the bigger question we should be addressing. When you decide to nitpick and say, but NUP, you didn't have candidates everywhere. Yes, we did not for those various reasons, because of the environment in which we operate. That, in my view, should be the bigger concern. Why is this ground not leveled? Why is it that presidential candidates are not treated equally? There's districts that we were denied chance by RPC, DPC to hold a rally, saying, no, you cannot be in the municipality. And we said, but last week there were 2 presidential candidates who held a rally in this municipality. Why are you saying the NUP candidate cannot hold a rally? Security reasons, you see, this is a municipality. I said you should have made it that way for everybody. But when you allow some, and not others is problematic. All of these things we should be concerned about. We would go for rallies, Patrick. We were in Bali. We reached, because anyway they would take us through off the main road and it would take forever. We got to the Bali rally 10 minutes to 6, which is closure. At exactly 6 p.m. police and the military began to fire live ammunition, tear gas. People got injured. There's one who nearly died there. I said, what is this about? We said we've been seeing videos of NRM candidates campaign and it is dark. When it is dark, obviously it is way beyond 6 p.m. But now here, because it is NUP, it has clocked 6. Immediately, you will not even wait for an extra 1 minute. You begin to fire live ammunition and all of that. All of these things should be of great concern to all of us, so that you don't just nitpick and say, but here you did not have a candidate. Why? Look at the general picture. It would help.
I suppose, I don't know how far you have gone to let the people who are supposed to give you the mandate look at Uganda and the politics from your prism, so that they can say enough, probably even get some holy anger, not the anger where they're going to be destructive, but anger where they can quietly say enough, because it has happened in other places where people will walk in the booth. I had an opportunity to speak to the Honorable Robert Chagulanyi sometime back after he had won the election for Chadondo. And I said, but you managed to do it. And he said something very fundamental that I remember, that you know what, if we're going to win, we have to win with an overwhelming mandate. And he put in Luganda, Baba Akataweze, that if you have the people and give you 90%, even if you have the rigging machinery, that is, if I may say, unriggable. That's how you need to, that's what you should be aiming at. But this of 50%, 60%, 51%, if people wanted to steal your vote, probably they would. Because I believed Robert Chagulanyi when he said, you know what, they actually try to steal when your victory is not decisive. So you should be aiming at the decisive. In other words, a knockout.
Absolutely, and that's what we keep working towards. Like I told you, it's an entire process, so the process gets affected at every turn. But you ask that, yes, at what point will the people of Uganda come on, I think what you're asking is, when will they be pressed against the wall enough? Look, Mr. Museveni says he got 71%. Surely when somebody wins with 71%...
That's what the Electoral Commission announced.
I don't care, I've said what I've said. There should be a frenzy of excitement with 71% in the entire country. You didn't see that. It's as if the country was in a state of despondency and a state of mourning of sorts.
The other day I had the President of the United States tell his supporters that they are going to win and actually even get tired of winning. Probably they too have been winning for the last 7 cycles, so it becomes normal.
I'm glad you are making a juxtaposition between the US and Uganda.
No, he said that you'll win so much until you even get tired of winning.
But let's get back to Uganda and sort out our confusion here, which we must be able to. I think that increasingly the people realize, as we have been telling them, that look, this is not about just us as leaders, as NUP. I mean, I've given that example. I saw that video of women who were crying out and saying, Chagulanyi, where are you? And they're breaking our stuff and so on. Yeah, we do sympathize again, but that's what we're saying of, this cannot just be about an individual. Some people remain in their comfort zones and say, for me, politics is not a big concern to me. I've got my 8 to 5 job, I drive my small car, and I am a bit comfortable. Until you are hit with a medical bill that your insurance and salary cannot take care of. And yet there's no hospital in Uganda that can treat you, and so people have to fundraise for you to go to India. Until when you are slapped with a traffic fine. I saw some elite the other day complaining about the express penalty scheme. People are being given traffic fines of 4 or 6 million in 2 days. And they were all up in arms. And we were saying, look, that's what happens in a sinking boat. You might be safe and comfortable for a while, but governance will come to your doorstep, each of you. I saw somebody make a comment that previously, back then, when Dr. Kizza Besigye would come to town, you know, the protests, and so traders would say, don't come here to disorganize us, to step into our merchandise and so on. And then the time comes and then the traders are saying, politicians fight for us. We are grappling with huge taxes, with flooding and all of these different things. And somebody made a comment and said, but the other time you were chasing away the politicians, saying they're coming to spoil your merchandise. Here you are. So the reality is that all of us must be concerned about the ills, because no one is safe. Patrick, it had never happened. I mean, I practiced journalism for 14 years, since 2006, until I eventually joined the political world. We would go and cover the Dr. Besigyes, and so they would beat them, tear gas and so on. Journalists were always safe. Not anymore. You can count how many journalists in the NTV newsroom that were brutalized, injured. Some still have those injuries. The military can see you a journalist, fully branded, and then they come for you and beat you up. Religious leaders. Many times we call on religious leaders to speak out. We were at the funeral service of Edith Mufumbiro, Alex Waiso's wife, today, and Reverend Canon Augustine Musiufu. Oh, he preached so marvelously. He spoke out against the ills, saying we must address the bad governance in our country, the abductions, the persecution, and so on. Something we always tell religious leaders that, look, do speak out, not in support of NUP, but speak out against ills. You're the voice of reason. You're the Janan Luumo of today to say this is wrong. Because when you keep quiet, it will come to your doorstep. Not long ago, you saw Reverend Father Deus Dedit Sekabira, abducted from Masaka, and for days, no one knew where he was. This is a religious leader. The point I'm making, Patrick, is that bad governance is going to come to everybody's doorstep. When people think that, no, it has got to be the politicians to, do the fighting and so on, all of us must be concerned about these ills. I gave an example in Parliament. There's an MP, an NRM MP called Paul Akamba. He was arrested with the others, and when he was granted bail, he was rearrested, actually abducted within court precincts and taken away, and for days no one knew where he was. His wife was crying and saying, I told parliamentarians, I said, you NRM people, many times we tell you about abductions and you mock us, you make it seem like we are crybabies. But here is one of your own, because a number of them were speaking out, complaining, government, where is our fellow MP and so on. I said, where were you when we were saying all of these different things? You are NRM, and this person who was abducted is NRM. Now, we don't know whether he's in a basement or safe house. And I said, it is immaterial that he committed an offense or he's accused of having committed an offense. Take him through the judicial process. Don't abduct him and take him away where no one knows where he is. Lawyers can't access him and so on. Now it was affecting not just an NRM member, an NRM leader. So that's to show you that no one is safe. And all of us must work towards a better country.
So, moving forward, you're quoting the religious leaders. To be honest, in my view, quite many of them and all of us have fallen short of the glory.
Yeah, that's why we must pick it up.
If you see what religious leaders do and how they preach, and especially now, there are many branches of Christianity that have come.
We must pick up the ball,
you wonder
wherever we dropped it, all of us. All of us. Whether a religious leader, cultural leader. Now look at civil society organizations. There's this sovereignty bill, which by the way is targeting opposition, civil society groups, but indeed every Ugandan. Not just opposition and civil society. Every Ugandan. So government is saying we want to safeguard our sovereignty, which is supposed to be in and of itself a good concept. But it's going to affect everybody. Ugandans in the diaspora on an annual basis, they remit about $2.5 billion US. That's about 9.3 trillion shillings. Now this bill, this impending bill is saying, you Ugandans who are in the diaspora, you are foreign agents until you get a license. So money that you send to educate your children, to do some small business and so on, it can be frozen. That's how ridiculous it's getting. Everybody now gets to be
which brings me to the another question. of the 12th Parliament, because probably this bill is going to be also handled by the 12th Parliament, right?
I don't know.
So, but I see the 12th Parliament, you have such a huge responsibility on you, because it looks like where we're headed with these kind of bills, and perhaps, to be hypothetical, you could also be having things to do with the constitutional amendments and maybe transitions. Do you understand where you stand right now? Because in my view, you are at a moment where you'll be able to turn the arc of history for bad or for good in this 12th Parliament. Do you appreciate that?
I think that as a country, we are at a very critical stage. Yeah. All of us as a country. Yeah, Parliament might be at the center of things, but all of us indeed. And we must ready ourselves for this critical moment. In the 10th Parliament, when the Honorable Kyagulanyi and the others were putting up resistance against the age limit bill, in all honesty, I mean, I was in the media and we were covering these things. In all honesty, as a nation, we let them down. We didn't join efforts with them. And that's why their resistance could not amount to much. They bundled them up, beat them up, took them out of Parliament, passed the bill as it were. What did the nation do about it? Recently, when we were putting up resistance against the age limit, I mean the UPDF amendment bill, the coffee bill, remember again they sent the military. This time, they actually began by switching off the lights, sent the media out, descended and began to break people's backs. When these things happen and the nation does not join in concert, it's inevitable that they will do whatever it is that they want. And so that's why I'm saying that as a nation, not just Parliament, that Parliament of yours, no, all of us as a nation, we are at a very critical time. We've got a 40-year-old regime, very brutal and dictatorial, an aging leader who is mortal, regardless what he thinks about himself. Sometimes, you know, when you are surrounded with all of this care and pampering and you can access any kind of health care in the world you want and so on.
It's still a bubble.
You can tend to imagine you are immortal. But
it is still a bubble.
Mortal. Yeah, and that bubble gets to burst at some point, yeah? And that's where we are as a leader. You've got his son who is heading the military. Oh my goodness, who is on rampage. He will say now, we are coming for you, we shall kill you, and then they come. We are going to raid you, they come. This one is in my basement, and then sure enough. It's a very problematic place for us to be as a country. And again, like I'm saying, not just we in NUP. I saw that General Muhoozi Kainerugaba, I don't even know his credentials. I mean, I'm a lawyer and other things. I'm not a military person, but I mean, I've seen people who have been around, have done all manner of things, and they're at particular ranks. But this one, maybe because he's Mr. Museveni's son, he kept shooting through the ranks. So anyhow, he apparently ordered the arrest of certain senior military officers. And then, eventually we see a picture of him and one of them, Brigadier Namanya, and then he said, yeah, I've had a conversation with him and I have forgiven him. I said, eh. So now Muhoozi imagines he has got the power and of life and death in his hands. That's where we are at. So even when you're a senior military officer, huffing and puffing, raiding NUP activities and beating up people, you're not safe, because if tomorrow he thinks you have annoyed him, he'll come for you. And you are at his whims and fancies to do whatever it is that he wants to do. Yesterday I was watching a news story on your news here at NTV. Mr. Museveni was speaking to MPs at Kyankwanzi. And he said, these MPs, yes, they stole taxpayers' money, but they approached me and I forgave them. He's in essence saying the judiciary is useless, it is in my pocket. Because these people were charged, arraigned in court, and the process was on. So that's where you are as a country.
So now, because, you know, really, as a leader of opposition and a senior leader in parliament, you can't be lamenting like the rest of us.
No, I'm not lamenting.
You can't be saying, well, this parliament can't do anything.
No, I'm poking you all to rise to the occasion. I'm not lamenting, Patrick.
So
no.
There's going to be a budget, to pass. I mean, this is the moment. Your job is, allocation of resources. This is the moment when you can say, no, we're not giving you the money unless ABCD is sorted. Are you saying you're incapable of using the power of persuasion so your other colleagues in parliament can understand? Because we thought you are the same level. You're a very persuasive man.
Yeah, if
you can argue your case, and the members of parliament will follow you and say, you know what, when it comes to appropriation for the UPDF or whoever it is, wait, this must be sorted before you get the money. That's the leverage that you have.
You know, if I didn't know Patrick Kamara as an individual, I would say, why is this man sounding naive? But I know Patrick Kamara, an intelligent man. Of course, you're asking that question for the good of the discussion and the people watching.
No, not really.
So I'll answer you.
no, come on.
Because anyone else watching might say, has this man just jetted into Uganda? But let me answer your question.
Joel, why are you in that parliament then?
So, and maybe that's the direction now we are going to. 2 days ago, we did present to the nation our alternative budget. We are few in number, yes?
Of 71 trillion.
But we said our numbers must count somehow. And we must paint a picture, a direction to the nation where we think we ought to be going. And that's very important. Because, Patrick, I don't want to be a leader of the opposition who only laments, as you're saying, who only criticizes. We've got to offer solutions. Yes, we criticize and say this is wrong. What's the solution then? And you reach out to colleagues. Of course, they'll be taken to Chankwanzi and hounded and told, this is what you must pass. Don't listen to anything else. That's okay. I will not feel demoralized that now we have banned the midnight oil to put this work together. It's not been considered. No, it's important that the people of Uganda see that this is a government in waiting. They're able to offer alternatives, credible alternatives. And that's why we do it. So yes, are we trying to persuade our colleagues? Yes, of course. And I'm glad that for the first time we had NRM MPs attending, some NRM MPs attending this function. And I told them, I'm so happy to see you here. I hope you realize that what they tell you, that these guys don't love the country, they want to burn it down, we'll have the country, and that's why we are offering these alternatives. We are saying, and now I'll give you some examples. Agriculture contributes 26% to our country's GDP. Agriculture contributes 42% to our export earnings as a country. Do you know how much has been allocated to agriculture? Patrick Kamara, senior journalist who researches. I'm sure you know these things.
Has always been hovering between 3 to 4%.
Where did you get that from? Okay, let me tell you. 1.7 trillion shillings. That's 2.2% of the budget. So we are saying, guys, 70% of our country's population operates within agriculture, is employed within agriculture. It's got massive potential. Patrick, I don't know if you know that most of the arable land in the whole of East Africa is here in Uganda. Here. Arable land suitable for farming. So we are saying, government, you made a commitment in 2014, the Malabo Declaration in Equatorial Guinea, where they said and put pen to paper as leaders of African countries that the bare minimum that each African country will
10%.
Inject in agriculture is 10%. So for us, we are saying, okay, let's move from 2%. Let's hit 5%. It's possible. When you inject money in agriculture, all this potential, you're going to reap the benefits out of it. It's just like tourism. Do you know that Uganda has got a mountain gorilla population that's about 3 times that of those in Rwanda? But many Europeans, they come to Africa to go to Rwanda to track mountain gorillas. Why? Because Rwanda is injecting in their tourism.
And by the way, they end up coming to Uganda to see the real gorillas.
A few of them, but because, and you see, if we were to do it, because we have got the real thing here, but the world doesn't know, you're not injecting in it, you're not doing what you ought to be doing. You've got a good product, but you're not marketing it out there.
We're not telling our story.
We're not. And those are things that we are saying, can we improve these things here? The roads to many national parks are in such a mess. I remember a few years ago, Honorable Chiwanda Subi was the Minister of State for Tourism. There was an incident, some tourists that came that spent about 2 days on the road going to a game park, and the road was terrible. And he made a comment, he thought he was joking, but it sounded very shallow anyway. He was at a press conference and he said, yeah, that incident of, the tourists getting stuck, that's part of the tourism experience they get to have in Uganda because they don't have bad roads in their country, so they see them here in Uganda. He said, now that's your minister for tourism. We've got to fix these things, Patrick.
But there's this argument telling me.
And some people will ask, like I'm sure you're about to ask, government is injecting 2.2%, as opposed to the 5% which we are proposing, because the money is not there. That's not true. The IGG has told us on an annual basis we lose 10 trillion shillings to corruption. Okay, move away from that. There's these companies that are given free money, and that's the case we are making also. Inspire Africa Coffee Factory in Ntungamo, 180 billion shillings. I went to that factory with colleagues. Said, let's go and see what this our money is doing. How is giving money to a private individual, free money? And I said, how is this money benefiting the ordinary Ugandan? NDP4, I'm sure you know what that is, which has run its races ending this end of fiscal year. Government committed itself to build 2 coffee factories, one in Buganda, one in Bugiso. Why? Because that's where most coffee is produced. Now in Ntungamo, they produce some coffee, not much. But instead of fulfilling the pledge you made in NDP4, you have gone and given money to a private investor.
I thought the job of appropriation still comes in.
And that's the case that we are making
you're the
colleagues
you're the
and saying,
money.
Let's put our money where our mouth is. We gave, and I'm saying we sadly because I was in the house, even though I put up a fight, 778 billion shillings to a one Magola Day Biopharma. That's the man who promised us a COVID vaccine. It never came. Then he said, I'm going to manufacture medicine for this country. I went there with colleagues in 2024. He said, by end of 2024, we're going to be producing medicine. It's not there. When we were having that debate for that money to be given, I asked Attorney General, I said, so you want us to give this money to this man, under what arrangement? He said, we are buying stake in the company. I said, okay, have you valued the company? He said, no. I said, how do you buy stake in a company that you've not valued by the chief government value? I said, okay, is there any kind of agreement? He said, not yet. The speaker said, let's give them the money, but it will remain on the Ministry of Finance account until they have done valuation and so on. I said, Madam Speaker, where does that happen ever at all? Once you have appropriated as Parliament, your duty ends there. You become functus official. For as long as you have done your part here, you're not going to follow up and say, don't release the money from the account of Ministry of Finance. She said, we shall follow up. I said, it's not possible. Anyway, I lost the vote because the other side had the numbers. Until tomorrow, that man got the money. No valuation has been done. No agreement. He took free government money. Atiak Sugar Factory, 668 billion shillings was given to them. There's no sugar coming out of that factory. Rocco Construction Company, 263 billion shillings.
You Parliament, you're giving the money.
And that's why, sadly, I say, because I was in the House, even though on record, I said no, we didn't have the numbers, and the other colleagues had the numbers. So those who ask and say, where is this money going to come from? The money is available. In this budget, and I'm calling on colleagues not to do that again. They want to give more money to Day Biopharma and these others. And I'm saying, guys, fool me once, the shame is on you. Fool me twice, the shame is on me. How can you be fooled twice? Okay, let's take it that you were fooled the other time. Don't allow to be fooled again. And I'm hoping that reason can be appealed to colleagues. We went to Lubowa Hospital. Over 700 billion shillings has been injected into that project so far. After we made a lot of noise, they decided to put up a shell of a structure there. When you're on the road, you see a shell, brick and mortar. And I'm saying that does not account for 700 billion shillings.
The
point that I have been making, let me finish this point.
Looks like a giving bonanza, and that is orchestrated by Parliament.
Sadly. And so yes, that Parliament is a scene of crime, without a doubt. So I was saying, colleagues, this money that we keep throwing into this white elephant called Lubowa Specialized Hospital, which was presented as the panacea to all these medical complications that take Ugandans to India and elsewhere, that we're going to resolve those medical issues here. I said that money which we are throwing into that bottomless pit, let's inject it in already existing health centers which are grappling with drug stockouts, lack of equipment, because those ones are already existing. That money,
so have you tried to find out that maybe behind the scenes of all these entities you're talking about, there is somebody or an entity that is gobbling public resources?
All of them are. And that's why you can't argue with, you'll meet a border man who will tell you, that Lubowa Hospital, that one is for this member of the first family, that Day Biopharma, that Inspire Coffee Factory in Ntungamo that is getting free money, it is for a member of the first family, they're giving themselves free money. You can't argue with that, because otherwise how else does it make sense?
So what does Parliament do? So okay, well, you sit in those air-conditioned walk in the marbled corridors of Parliament, but ultimately, what do you do for us?
Yeah, and that's why you, the people, you must keep holding us accountable, because sometimes you have become too sleepy. So as we make noise there and so on, they will send the military to beat us up and all of that, and nothing happens. And then tomorrow, you will complain. But yeah, that's the reality that's happening.
Please, Joel.
So you must rise to the occasion.
So now
Yes, I'm serious.
It's like now we are in the Orwellian kind of times where there's manipulation of what.
No,
so now it's us.
No. I'm not abdicating my responsibility. That's why I'll come up with alternatives. That's why I'll stand up and say, no, let's not give money to this entity. Now, when I'm overpowered by the numbers the other side, Ugandans, this is not just about me. Where are you? I gave you the example of when the Honorable Chagulanyis were in the 10th Parliament, put up resistance against age limit. They were beaten, they were clobbered, and so on. Did Ugandans react?
You know, if we can go back to the issue of agriculture, there has been some kind of reasoning that you cannot entirely put money in agriculture because agriculture will need roads, agriculture will need electricity, agriculture will need irrigation, that when you, put together, aggregate that, you can actually reach 10%.
So let me ask, has the irrigation been done? Have the roads been done, Patrick? How much is the cost of electricity?
In your own budget, alternative budget, you actually also didn't hit the Malabo declaration.
No, we are actually saying, let's be practical, because you're doing 2.2%. So we mentioned there that the commitment was the 10% Malabo declaration. But let's make steps to get to the 10 for starters. Let's make it 5%. So we are cutting them some slack because they might say, you guys, where are you going to get all this money from? We are saying, okay, let's at least begin with half, because you're not even at a quarter. A quarter would be 2.5%, that's 2.2%. So meaning it is achievable.
You may hound the managers of the Ugandan economy, but just before we came on air, I was reading online how Tanzania, the fuel prices, or that the pump price has gone almost 30% more. And yet, in Uganda, we haven't yet reached there. Never mind.
Why are you comparing yourself
to
the worst?
Why wouldn't I?
Because why should you? Compare yourself to the best. What's wrong with you?
Look, Uganda has had a tumultuous past. If you compare it with Malawi or Zambia or Ghana, that probably have had a clean the last 60 years.
Have they?
Have they been fighting? There hasn't been fights in Zambia or Malawi or Ghana or whatever. But look, we seem to be better. You travel there quite more often than I do.
Patrick, I don't even know what comparison you're trying to make. So you tell me that because...
That give it to the guys at the Ministry of Finance. They seem to be knowing what they're doing if you compare them with other managers of economies in the region.
Really?
Yes.
So why do you have a debt burden of 130 trillion shillings?
The debt in itself, it's about you as members of parliament, if the loan is given, to make sure it is effectively utilized, because having a debt is not a big deal. I suppose, in my view, the issue is
how... So is our debt burden all right?
The issue is how you have utilized that money, and yet it is your job.
So is it being utilized
of parliament as an oversight role to make sure the money is well utilized?
But you're saying all is well. That's what you just said. Anyway, Patrick, whatever...
I'm not saying all is well. Look. I can see some glimmer of hope. There's some
really?
Centers of excellence here and there. If you compare with other countries that have not even had war.
Center of excellence.
I got some of these countries in Southern Africa, and I'm like, but what's up?
This show is called On the Spot.
Yes.
Paint for me a picture of excellence about us here and our economy. Prove me wrong. Now that I'm all out there making things look terrible. So you're saying you see a picture of excellence. Help me and the viewers understand.
No, look, I'm not...
Just give one example.
That's your job.
No, you're the one. No, it's not me saying there's excellence. It's you saying there's excellence. Me, I'm disputing that. Now that you are saying there's excellence here, give me just one example, not two, just one.
For more than since independence, if you look at all countries surrounding us, whether it is Congo, whether it's South Sudan, whether it is Up Sudan, whether it is Somalia, just to be able to hold the entity together called Uganda,
But you guys went to Congo and you stole their timber, raped their women, battered their people. That case was at the International Court of Justice. You have forgotten too soon. And we were fined. You've forgotten how much? 325 million US dollars. We're still paying up to date.
The same Congolese government invited Uganda to go into Congo because they thought Uganda has the gravitas to be able to deal with the insecurities in the Congo.
The time when our army went and...
Kinshasa invited Kampala. I hope you are aware about that.
Patrick, when they went to loot the timber, rape the women there, and steal all that they did and so on, were they invited?
I'm also telling you that just after that, Kinshasa invited Kampala to have the forces in the Congo.
Regardless how that happened, I'm still talking about a past that we are still paying for now. Because you're blaming Congo for being in a mess. You're part of the mess. And by you, I mean Uganda. But anyhow,
the parliament
still do not excuse shabbiness and poor governance. We lose 10 trillion shillings a year to corruption. How do you relate that to, because you're saying our bad history and so on, how do you relate that to the previous war in the north? That is an excuse for you to steal 10 trillion shillings per year, to batter opponents simply because they don't support you, to abduct people that you don't follow the rule of law. That's what you're calling a picture of excellence? Patrick, when did you become this way?
You see, you as members of parliament, you have abrogated your own duty because you are supposed to be putting the government to task to be able to do your oversight role, to be able to use your leverage and not give them the money when you see things not going right.
Let me agree with you. Let me agree with you, because I've been making that point, but you probably chose not to follow. I actually do agree with you that yes, Parliament has abdicated its responsibility. When I became leader of the opposition, I made remarks and I said, my duty constitutionally as leader of the opposition is to keep the government in check. But that duty is not just for we in the opposition. I said it's a duty for the entire Parliament. So when you NRM colleagues are put in buses and taken to Chankwanzi, and they tell you just go and pass this law regardless, and you come back and pass the law, you have let the country down. Because we are all, as the legislature, supposed to hold government accountable, to keep them in check. When you leave it to the small numbers on this end, or even as we try to do that as we push back, you choose not to, then we have abdicated on our responsibility. So yes, you are right in as far as that is concerned, and that's the point that we keep making, to say, look, you NRM MPs, for you, don't you want good hospitals in your constituencies? Don't you want good roads? Don't you want better? I was teasing and mocking, literally, a number of those NRM colleagues who lost elections, a number of them who said they were rigged and so on. I said, but you guys, each time we were talking about vote rigging here and so on, you're saying, you opposition, you just keep shouting vote rigging. But now I'm seeing you're also complaining that you were rigged. We should have collectively fought against this monster called vote rigging and bad governance together. When you chose to side with it and not fight against it, it has now eaten you up. So the day of reckoning eventually comes, without a doubt.
Now, let me change gears here, Joel, because soon the 12th Parliament will be sitting, and then you'll be electing the Speaker, Deputy Speaker, and all this. I wonder whether, as NUP, you have a horse in the race of your own, whether you are also going to front somebody to run for Speaker of Parliament, or you have just left that for the NRM to do their part.
What answer do you expect me to give you, Mr. Patrick Kamara?
How can I?
I'll answer your question, whichever way you put it. If we had, of course, you would know you are NTV. And you guys are the #1 TV station in this country. You would know. But we haven't. So there's your answer.
And that is on, why wouldn't you dare? For heaven's sake, there's somebody trying to dare, he does not even have the numbers that you have.
Patrick, one time you told me you had political aspirations, but then you didn't run. Why? Maybe because you said, let me wait it out a little bit. Maybe I'm not ready, maybe not now.
Are you about to say everything? We'll stop you and I? Like, is that what it was meant?
No, I was just trying to drive the point home that
so even everything you said when you came home, you're going to say it again?
And strategize and prepare yourself. No, it's okay to have political ambitions and people.
No, what I'm trying to say.
There's no harm. But anyway,
the conversation I've had with you at home should not be brought here.
No, I'm actually saying, in fact, now to say that maybe you need to come there in so that you get to participate in bettering things because you've got the potential. Why not? Anyhow, let me get back to your question. You'll ruminate over that. You'll think about it. I think that you'd make a good legislator. But anyhow, the point that, yes, you were asking you plan and strategize and pick battles. Yeah.
So in other words, as far as the race is concerned, you have surrendered.
We have thus far picked our battles, and this is not one of them for very obvious reasons. Obviously, we don't have the numbers, and so you pick your battles.
Yeah, but you can win a battle, but you need to win the war.
Yeah, you begin with battles. A war is
Tactic
the larger
about,
thing. It's made up of
tactic is about the battle, but strategy is about war.
That's all of it. Tactic, strategy.
But strategy is about winning the war. Tactic is a battle.
All of it. So you deploy all of that and say, okay, this, yes, this, maybe not now, whatever the case might be, and it's okay.
I'm going to change gears again.
Please.
The Honorable Robert Kyagulanyi, is he in exile or on leave?
None of the above.
What's going on?
He's out of the country for now. Certainly not in exile. Certainly not on leave. He's working. He's doing his work as well as our leader having engagements with leaders at that international level. Of course, the genesis is he had to move away from home for a bit because of the hounding that was happening, the attacks on him and his family, including physical attacks. They raided his home, assaulted his wife and family members. So it was important to first be away from that situation. But yes, he's going to be back soon, without a doubt.
And lastly, just a few hours ago, I had a conversation with the former vice president of NOP, former leader of opposition, the man you replaced. And yeah, because he's on record, actually. I was doing this on another platform with him. And I'm like, why did you actually exit? He was very candid in what he said, that NOP, the top leadership, was dangerous, was divisive, and quite frankly, felt like they were incompetent. Many are inclined to listen to him because he had a front row position in the party. When you hear such voices being spoken about the party leadership at the top from people who were at the top, what do you make of that?
Yeah, Patrick, I really want to hesitate to talk about the past. We're talking about the future. That's why we are discussing where we want our country to go. So I want to discuss things
because the baggage you carry from the past,
the future,
the baggage you carry from the past will be a stumbling block for you.
And things that are in the past should remain there, honestly. What happened did happen. We did take a stand, a very firm stand that we are not apologetic for. So if somebody is saying we were not competent and so on, yes, you're competent. You started your own political entity, and I can see you're thriving. Next question.
Honorable Joel Senyonyi, I want to thank you so much for the time you've given us. What do you envisage of the 12th Parliament is going to be like?
Well, you see, Parliament is really a subset of the country and the goings on there. It's just a mirror of our country. it's a reflection of the bigger quandary we have got to deal with as a country. Institutional breakdown is at an all-time high, and that's why Parliament is that way too. I mean, you had the speaker the other day who said, me, when the president tells me to jump, I don't ask why, I ask how high. That's what happens with most of our institutions. And that's why Mr. Museveni at Chankwanzi, he said, after MPs were arrested for stealing taxpayers' money, when they went to him and apologized, he forgave them. So he took over the judiciary. And so on and so forth. So that's the challenge that we do have as a country that we must face and deal with. I really hope that ultimately we can all rise to the occasion. We have all got a responsibility toward this country. Whether you're political leaders like myself, in Parliament and elsewhere, let's execute our mandate. If you're a journalist, and I would like to commend you as NTV, you know, that's why you're getting a beating. NTV was chased away from Parliament, was chased away from Mr. Museveni's campaigns. Why? Because you're showing the truth. You don't sit and you manufacture news as if you're doing a movie. No, you show the military beating people and you put it on your news because that's what is happening. And because of that, you get to be hounded. So you're playing your part, and we hope that the media can continue to do that because they're not safe either. We keep calling on religious leaders to speak out. To speak out. Janani Lumu was not an MP. He didn't have to be, but he was a leader. And he spoke out and said, this is wrong. And that's what we all must get to do. Don't wait for bad governance to come to your doorstep, because it will.
Okay.
Don't wait for it. So when we see all these political prisoners, you know, people who are abducted and so on, it's easy for somebody to say, that's NUP business, it doesn't concern me. It will come to you, even though you're not NUP. I was in the media when I saw General Kale Kaihura after he had fallen out with the regime. He was in the General Court Martial, and he had his lawyers, powerful ones, senior counsel Eddie Karuhanga, and he was pleading before General Guti at the time, saying, my client, release him, he has been in jail for more than 48 hours, the law doesn't allow that. Then I remembered Kale Kaihura, when he was in charge of police, he played a great role to decimate the 48-hour rule. And he would say, no, me, even if it's to hold you for weeks, I will, in police custody, and we'll continue investigating. They said, but Kale, you're a lawyer. Why don't you want to follow the law? Now, he had contributed to annihilating that 48-hour rule, or at least doing damage to it. Now, when he needed it, it was not present. So whatever it is that we are, you know, sometimes people are in powerful positions and they forget that they are not there forever. Do what's right. I was having a chat, and now this is public out there, with our former colleague, the Honorable Agnes Nandutu, who has now been convicted. I had a chat with her shortly after we got into Parliament, 2021. She had been appointed minister. I said, Agnes, you know we're in the newsroom together. You're now NRM side, I'm opposition. Let's serve the country. I used to see you do people's parliament, speaking about the issues of concern to the people, you know, and so on. I said, please don't change. Anyhow, she got there in. I remember a particular situation when there was...
Are you mocking her?
No, I'm not. I'm just saying we should pick a lesson, because all of us, I'm in a position of influence. I should also try and do what's right. You know, I remember we took some help to Karamoja. The time Karamoja was in a dire state. Government had taken a while, and so as NUP we said, let's put together some little things, whatever we can anyway. It could be a drop in the ocean, but so we put, I think there were like 2 or 3 trucks, something, sent to Karamoja. Agnes went on TV and she said, this is NUP. They've not done even 0.0%. They're just showing off. They're, you know, I called her, I said, Agnes, the people of Karamoja are crying out for help from wherever. I said, do you think we would be happy to spend our little money if government did what it ought to do? I said, you should actually be appreciating us for doing something about this situation. During COVID, you remember government was reaching out. Those who have ambulances, give us. Those who have, you know, I said, Agnes, you should have called me actually to say thank you. And then you add on to that, instead of now trivializing what we had done. So anyway, we pray for her to go through the situation she's going through. But it's a lesson. I've used Agnes's example, Kale Kaihura, there's numerous other examples that I can use. that we do right when we...
Joel, we run a risk of having Saturday show on Thursday and end it on Friday. I want to thank you so much. What's going to be your parting shot?
My parting shot has really been that all of us as the people, let's rise to the occasion and strive for a better country, regardless where you belong. It's a clarion call I always make in Parliament, and I normally tell my colleagues on the NRM side. And I say, look, when you hear us speaking about abductions and so on, please stand and support us, because tomorrow it might be you. When we say now that we are in the budget process, let's put our money where our mouth is. Please listen, because tomorrow I was having a chat with Honorable Chris Baryomunsi, still in the House. I said, you Honorable, you remember you had a medical challenge in your constituency, deep. The only place they could take you to was that nearest health center, which was ill-equipped, until eventually you had to be airlifted. I said, you were lucky. What if, by the time you were brought to Kampala or whatever, things could have gotten worse? Fight to see that health center has medication. Even if you don't go there, a challenge might happen to you when it's the only one that can attend to you. And that speaks for all of us.
Honorable Joel Ssenyonyi, Leader of Opposition, speaking without mincing your words, gifted orator, and a leader who is inspiring many Ugandans. I want to thank you so much for the time you've given us, for the value you always add on this platform. I'm rooting for Uganda. I know we have a good country and we're good people, and very optimistic that as a people we shall get there. Good night.